I'm here with Matt Intenzo, candidate for governor, and here in Kanabec County, we have some of the highest unemployment figures, some of the highest foreclosure figures. We've been hit hard by LGA, and it's a stagnant, if not dwindling, tax base. Yet Governor Plenty has made exactly 0 official visits here in the last 4 years. Care to respond to that?
Well, I've been here in Kanabec County quite a bit over the course of the last not only couple of years, but going back over a decade as leader of the Democrats in the State House and as someone who's campaigned here in the Mora area a lot. This area has been underserved. The schools are hurting. Local government aid has been hit too much, so basic services like police and fire are put in peril. And we need a governor like me who comes from rural Minnesota, who understands rural Minnesota, and who is going to take the concerns of rural Minnesota into account.
Let's turn our attention to the issue of the day and health care. I know it's more of a federal issue, but are you as confused as the rest of us seem to be? Have you had a chance to look over the meat and potatoes of the bill? And what's it going to mean to Minnesotans, and what's it going to mean to us here in Kanabec County?
Well, Minnesota's lucky. We've got a pretty good healthcare system already, but I think some of the things that are going to happen that are very important, first of all, insurance companies aren't going to be able to deny people coverage just because they've got a pre-existing condition, and that's very important for us. And secondly, we're going to open up low-cost options for small businesses and others so that they can buy into healthcare. And I think when you add on top of that the strengths we already have in Minnesota Care and some of our other Minnesota-based things like the Mayo Clinic and the University of Minnesota, that's going to open a lot of things up to help us here in Minnesota. But we've got to make sure that we're constantly making sure that costs are kept under control, that people get preventive care, because we can't afford to have health care costs and budget deficits go up too high. Well, we need to do everything we can to try and keep healthcare costs down. What I worry about less than people shopping in Wisconsin is the idea that someone might get a cheap policy in Arkansas or Mississippi and think that's good coverage, when the reality is some of those policies, for example, exclude giving birth if you're a woman who's pregnant, or they won't cover cancer, or they won't cover heart disease. So sometimes cheap is that, it's cheap. And so I think we want to make sure that the basics are covered, but that we keep healthcare costs as low as we possibly can.
Do you agree with the governor's plan to incorporate LGA as a budget solution? And if not, how would you do things differently?
Well, I think the budget's been balanced on the backs of rural Minnesota communities, and we've seen that here in Kanabec County and in cities like Mora and other communities in the region. And we can't afford to do that. If you live in an Egan or an Edina or an Eden Prairie, you're not feeling the effects of the budget costs. And what I fundamentally disagree with isn't sacrifice, but you got to have shared sacrifice. And we can't have sacrifice that's balanced on the backs of communities like this that are already struggling with employment and the recession, making it very, very hard for communities to get back on their feet again.
We have a district here, Ogilvie. They've gone to a 4-day work week effective this school year. They're on the verge of statutory operating debt, 2 failed referendums in a row, and they're just kind of hanging on by the skin of their nails. What would you say to the superintendent in Ogilvie and to the parents who have kids over there about the immediate and not so immediate future?
Well, you know, I grew up down in Worthington, down in southwest Minnesota. I grew up in a family where I lost my dad when I was 15 to alcoholism, and we lost our home, and we didn't have health care for a long time. If I hadn't had a strong public school, I wouldn't have had a lot of opportunities. And it really makes me upset when I see what's happening in Ogilvie, and not just Ogilvie, but a lot of other communities where they're going to a 4-day week, not because it's better education, but because it's all that they can afford, and they're cheating our kids. But it's not the fault of the school board or the superintendent. It's the fault of a state government that is not investing in education. And I think we've got to get our economy going again, and I've got a strategy to do that, and then we need to drive that revenue back into helping our schools. Well, Minnesota has historically been a great state, but in education, in roads and bridges where we've seen them fall down, and in key areas like economic growth, Minnesota's gone backwards. I'm going to be the governor that's going to bring Minnesota back again. Our clean energy economy means we can build turbines and solar and things like that in areas like this, fuel our rural economy. Let's have the cities pay for a lot of their power from rural Minnesota rather than some despot in the Middle East. And let's reinvest in our schools and our roads and make Minnesota great again.